Episode 11. Why would she want any other man?
Mommy,
Liam looked at Bryce's departing back and whispered.
where is Daddy going?
Natalie touched his head. She felt conflicted. He seemed certain that this man was his father, and no matter what she said, she couldn't change his mind. She smiled helplessly and was about to remind him again that that wasn't his dad. But when she raised her head, she saw Cheryl walking slowly toward her. "What are you doing here?" Her expression immediately darkened, and she spoke with a tone that was not cold, but also could not be described as indifferent. Cheryl immediately played innocent and lightly tugged her arm. "I don't need a reason. I was just afraid that my sister was bored, and so I came over to chat." Why was she suddenly acting so kind? She'd been angry just now, and now she was trying to provoke her. "Natalie, you don't know this, but I actually used to envy you." Seeing that Natalie wasn't paying attention to her, Cheryl pouted and continued sadly. "Ever since I was young, Dad was always with you, while Mom and I lived in that rented apartment. I was really envious of you. I even wanted to snatch Dad and Nick away from you." Natalie found it funny that she spoke as if she had been wronged, but didn't know who was responsible for it. "But you know, big sis," Cheryl choked, and her voice filled with sobs. "Nick was really loyal to you. He only wanted to be with you, which is why I made you hurt me, so that I could get his attention, so that he would care for me. In the first year after you went abroad, he was in turmoil. But by helping him through the most difficult days of his life and letting him see my strengths, he slowly started to develop feelings for me." "Have you finished?" Just as Cheryl was getting started, Natalie, who remained expressionless, interrupted her. "I'm not interested in listening to your emotional story, nor do I have time to watch you brag." "Why?" She immediately put on a sad expression and then laughed out loud. "You're not holding yourself back anymore. Well, it's true, you've always been like this. That's what I like about you most. Otherwise, 5 years ago, you wouldn't have played into my hands like a fool. Do you think you can become a queen bee just by hooking up with Bryce Clare? He doesn't know about your past, does he?" Cheryl had a face full of mischief. She tapped her chin with her finger and casually picked up a glass of wine from a server beside her. "If he knew that you still had feelings for your little sister's fiancé, how would he react?" She thrust the wine into Natalie's hands and pushed her away with a frown. Then she smirked and threw herself to the ground. With her hair in a mess around her head, she cried, "Sister, you already have Bryce. Why are you still thinking about Nick?" She purposely raised her voice to attract the attention of all the guests in the hall. "Do you still blame me for getting together with him?" She bit her lips as tears threatened to fall from her eyes. "But he caught you cheating. You broke his heart first. How can you still—" She did not finish her sentence, but she had already said enough to put all the blame on Natalie. The surrounding guests looked at the stunned Natalie, who felt her head buzzing and her temples throbbing. Seeing Cheryl kneeling on the ground in a very sorry state, Nick squeezed through the crowd, pulled her into his arms, and roared fiercely, "Natalie, why are you like this?" Even Tom leaned towards her and reprimanded her. "How could I have a daughter with such a vicious heart?" The endless scolding made her head spin. She put Liam down, afraid that she would drop him.
You nasty woman!
Liam shouted at Cheryl, who was still on the ground.
You're lying!
Natalie felt unbearable pain in her chest. She tried her best to support herself, but her vision went dark again. Losing her balance, she fell backward. But instead of hitting the cold tiled floor, she fell into a warm embrace. Bryce caught her tightly in his arms and looked up at Cheryl with a cold gaze as she was helped to her feet. Seeing his stare, Cheryl panicked and started to act pitifully. With a weak voice, she said, "Mr. Clare, don't blame me. My sister grew up with Nick after all. They grew up together." Bryce sneered and turned to look at Nick with a hint of ridicule in his voice, still talking to Cheryl. "Your sister had a bad taste in the past, but that's over now. With me here, why would she want any other man?" He did not react to Cheryl's stupefied expression. Instead, he picked up Liam with one arm and hugged the unconscious Natalie close to him before turning around and leaving.